there's also this. TV insiders are reportedly in panic mode at the thought of another Trump victory. One unnamed media executive telling New York Magazine, quote, "If half the country has decided that Trump is qualified to be president, that means they're not reading any of this media, and we've lost this audience completely. A Trump victory means mainstream media is dead in its current form. And the question is, what does it look like after?"
Joe Concha is a Fox News contributor. He joins us now. That extends not just to TV, but to the newspapers as well. Could that help explain, Joe, why the Washington Post is reportedly paying for advertising on social media platforms to boost its own stories that are criticizing Trump with just a few days to go before the election, i.e., they're worried about their survival?
And they should be worried about their survival. What did we see over the last week? Over 250,000 subscriptions canceled to the Washington Post. And if Donald Trump wins, that's the only thing, Todd, that will keep that paper afloat, because people will read it because of the hate coverage that happens there. But let's put it this way. Here's a deal, to use a Bidenism. Trump is far more accessible, has done far more press conferences than Kamala Harris, who was hidden from the press for more than 6 weeks after Biden stepped down. We've seen this time and again since July. The media makes up a lie. There's no evidence for it. The media friends and politicians echo that lie. A narrative is established. The public believes it, and the damage is done. So excuse me if I'm skeptical here just a little bit about an unnamed executive talking about journalism being in big trouble, because legacy media, especially over the last couple of weeks, has done itself no favors, where they've been basically an extension of Kamala Harris's campaign. There's no arguing that. They, for 3 days, pushed a story about a comedian who told a joke 3 hours before Donald Trump spoke at a rally at Madison Square Garden, thinking that was a big deal. And then when the sitting president of the United States calls half the country garbage, they try to cover up for it. That in itself, that one example, is exactly where journalism is right now. And if it dies, well, it's already dying, believe me, in the eyes of this executive. I'm sorry, there's not a lot of sympathy here based on the way they've conducted themselves, especially since July. No question.
So, Joe, in this New York Magazine piece, another unnamed, this time it was a political reporter, worried covering Trump would take away from other important stories. And this reporter said, if he is trying to turn America into an autocracy, could investigative reporters embark on a series about sexism in girls' sports? Maybe, but I think if there's actual things to investigate with a president, it would be hard to use those sorts of resources for much other than that. So this reporter is already planning an investigation of Donald Trump before the election has even happened. An investigation over what, I guess we'll find out.
They'll figure something out.
Yeah, Carly, if this person calls himself a reporter, they're not a reporter when they use literally in the same sentence that Trump will turn this country into an autocracy. I was alive in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and I am certain that we didn't live in an autocracy. In other words, all these predictions about Trump doing XYZ if he's elected, we've already seen the movie, and none of this has ever happened. So this person is not a reporter. They're an activist for the Democratic Party. And I'm just, again, tired of hearing this stuff, considering that we already have a precedent and things were pretty good for the press then. I never saw more reporters, more journalists write more books about Donald Trump and have more access to a president than we saw when Donald Trump was elected last time. It will happen that way again. This is all fear-mongering to get Kamala Harris over the finish line, guys.
I would just quickly, before we move on to the next topic, it should be noted the Washington Post has a poll that has Trump leading Michigan by 2 points. I wonder if they promote that on their social media as well, because it's a pretty pro-Trump story. We always ask about where is the October surprise? Well, Joe Biden may be the October surprise due to his antics this week. First, we have him, disparaging half the country, then attempting to bite or eat children. According to The Hill, Democrats had a sense Biden would spoil Harris's presidential race, writing the following, quote, "But even before Biden's garbage comment, there were whispers he would be responsible for a Harris defeat. These voices say Biden's withdrawal from the race in late July didn't do Harris any favors since she hasn't had enough time to properly telegraph her biography. Others said he never should have run for re-election and that he should have allowed the party to have a full primary to pick his successor." What do you make of that rationalization that if Kamala loses, it's all Joe's fault?
Well, I know Amy. I worked with her at the Hill, and that is probably very well sourced. All right, but all of that said, I believe everything that was just quoted back to me in terms of Joe Biden is not happy about the fact that he is not at the top of the ticket right now, taking on Donald Trump. He would make the argument, I beat Donald Trump last time. I did it. I could do it again. I was pushed out by my own party. And the fact that Kamala Harris does this speech at the Ellipse and tells Joe, no, you stay away, please. I don't need the distraction when he's about, a 5 foot away from that speech. And the fact that he was on that Zoom call talking about garbage and Trump supporters being garbage at the same time, basically, that she's doing the biggest speech of her life. You can make the argument. I think some of this is intentional, right? Last week, he was talking about we got to lock Trump up. That's going to make headlines. That steps on Kamala Harris's message. So, yeah, he's not happy about this. And when you talk to those close to the president, they will say that, yeah, you do realize that Joe Biden does not like Kamala Harris very much. Yeah. That appears to be the case here, because why else would he be doing all of this? Right?
Well, the piece in the Hill says that some Democrats are very worried. Others are more hopeful now than ever before that Kamala Harris will win. So we'll wait and see what happens. It's a coin toss, according to the polls. Joe, got to leave it there. Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.